Hi, it's Charlie Minato from halfwheel.com, and I am extremely awkwardly framed. But you're not here to see me, you're here to see this, which is the Zino Z80 Humidor from Davidoff. And it's a medium-sized desktop humidor. The 80 is in reference to the amount of cigars that it can hold, and I think that's probably about right if you're only storing Robustos and Coronas inside. It's basically a large shoebox, more or less. It's priced at $695. We picked it up at a Black Friday sale for $399, which I would say is a very good deal. All the humidors kind of look the same. There's 3 different colorways, so they all have black lacquer here on the bottom, and then the top piece is a finished wood, but not a lacquered wood. So this is Ayus, which I've probably butchered. It's the lightest of the bunch, and then Oak, which I don't think I've butchered the pronunciation of, and then there's also a wood called Paulina? I don't know. Anyway, but that's up on the screen. You can see they all kind of look the same. It's a very simple humidor. There's no locks or exposed hygrometers on the outside of the front of the humidor. If I turn it to the side here, you can see there is a small Zino logo in the corner that actually is in focus, which is a good sign. And then on the back, there's nothing, as there is with most humidors. And then on the other side, there is no logo. So it's just straight black and slightly tan design or off-white design. And I don't find this to be the most the greatest looking humidor. It's not terrible, but it is kind of awkward. I suppose if you have like a car that's got a white cream leather seating and then you got the high gloss piano finish, it would look great, or it would match it, but it doesn't really match anything in our office, unfortunately. So if we open the humidor up, you can see there is a hygrometer. It's a Zino branded version of Davidoff's hygrometer, so it uses, instead of florist foam, which is the green stuff you see on most hygrometers, Davidoff uses some sort of mineral solution instead, and it works a little bit better, I found. Haven't seen any evidence of any of the humidifiers that I've used in the past with this type of internal solution. I haven't seen any of them starting to mold like you oftentimes see with florist foam. That's not to say that I haven't really opened them up and tried to figure that out yet, because there isn't a great way to open it up. You would have to break it. But they include a little water dropper to help fill it up. I would recommend that you, instead of lying it completely flat, that you tilt it slightly and then work from the part that's a little bit higher up and start putting the water in there and just let it kind of trickle down. It seems like that's a bit easier way to fill these up without making a mess. As you can see, there is not a magnetic lid, but there is a magnet on the lid, which is not ideal. I wish the lid was entirely magnetic, but can't win them all, I suppose. There is no included hygrometer. This is really challenging to do on camera. But there is no included hygrometer. And unlike some other Davidoff, the higher end Davidoff humidors, a lot of times will have a secondary magnet somewhere up on the lid, and that's for you to place scissors, or a lot of people use it for the hygrometers. This one does not have that feature, but I guess that's what you get for the price difference. So, as we can see, if we can get this back in focus, if I remove the tray, you will see the bottom is just like any other humidor. There are removable dividers. They aren't the stiffest in terms of they go in and out quite easily, as opposed to being extremely tight. And I find that to be a lot better. I'm sure they will continue to get tighter over time, but rather than having to try to fight with them, you can remove them, move them to whatever position you want very easily. One other interesting little note is that in the tray, there is actually indentations for a handle. So let's see if we can get them without all the cigars falling down. So you can see, maybe, let's see if I can get my hand out of the way. So you can see right here, there's an indentation. There's an indentation on both sides of the tray. I'm sure this is great content. And it's a lot easier to pick it up with these 2 little slots as opposed to without them. I would suggest, or I would say that to use those little slots, because the interior is actually super smooth. So this is not Spanish cedar. It's a wood called a kume, which Davidoff uses for a lot of its humidors, and others have also used it. The reason being, I guess we should start with Spanish cedar. So the reason why you see Spanish cedar used for humidors is because A, it was naturally sort of found in a lot of the same places where cigars are being made, and B, Spanish cedar retains a lot of moisture. So the concept was, hundreds of years ago, you would make cigar boxes or cigar humidors out of Spanish cedar. The Spanish cedar could absorb the water from the natural air and humidified environments, and then it would help to keep your cigars quote-unquote fresh. that was hundreds of years ago. Eventually, someone figured out that you could add things that would also be able to retain humidity that were a little bit cheaper and easier to refill than Spanish cedar. So that's when you start to see florist foam and other things. Now we've got something like this, which is a slightly, or I would say a substantially more advanced version of florist foam. You've got things like Boveda. You've got electronic humidifiers with sensors that are extremely more advanced than what we were operating with 150 years ago. And so the need for Spanish cedar isn't there. And Spanish cedar has one big downside, which is that it smells. And a lot of people like that smell, but it's a very strong and distinct smell. And Davidoff, like a lot of other humidor makers, has sort of taken the stance of, it's not supposed to be there inherently, and many consumers probably don't want it to be there. And so rather than using Spanish cedar, they use akume, which is a wood that is known for not having much, if any, odor. The other big difference, as far as I can tell, is that akume, in this particular use case, and in many of the other cases I've seen, it gets smoothed out and sealed, and so it's super smooth, unlike a Spanish cedar humidor, where rubbing your fingers across it is actually somewhat of an agitating process. So the other parts of this humidor that are very nice are all the finishes. So like up here, you can see this is a slotted, rounded off interior piece, and that's made to help with the seal with the tray, or with the top part in the tray. And it's one of these small little features that you don't see on most humidors that just helps to reinforce the idea that this is a sort of a luxury humidor, and you're spending a lot of money and getting something in return. I'd also point out that on the back here, an astute humidor connoisseurs will notice this, but rather than having the traditional hinges, you have these four little pieces. That's what the lid rests on, and it's basically on the bottom there's a ball, and so that's it, and there's a slot inside of it, and then the top piece has the sort of the male end of that, and so it fits inside. It makes for a much more flush look. On most humidors, including on the super high-end Davidoff humidors, instead of that you would see some metal hinges on both sides, and this just looks a lot cleaner, and I suspect at some point we'll see Davidoff begin to use this on all of their humidors because it's just a much better look as far as I'm concerned. And so as far as the performance of the humidor, works great. I find that the Davidoff hygrometers are better than florist foam, and they certainly mold less than florist foam. I haven't had any mold issues yet with them, but they also operate a little bit higher relative humidity wise than what I would normally recommend. I find they're in the 71, 72, 73 range, whereas I would prefer they be in the 68, 69 range. And so I'll probably switch this over to Bovedas, or perhaps add a Boveda or two to help with the Davidoff humidor, or Davidoff humidifier. It'll actually, the Bovedas would lower it down, and that's probably the end game solution. But as far as the seal goes, it's great. And I will make this bold proclamation. I think this is the best made humidor for under $1,000. I've used a lot of Daniel Marshall humidors over the years. I've used the Diamond Crown, the Savoys, all the sort of big name, go into a store and buy a humidor. As far as under $1,000, LA Blue doesn't make a humidor under $1,000 to my recollection. And I've used some of the other Davidoff humidors as well, or the Davidoff made, but Zino branded, or Avo branded humidors. This is the best one, far and away. It's not the best value. It only holds 80 cigars, and $700 for 80 cigars isn't great. But if you want to get the best made humidor for under $1,000, the Zino Z80, it's probably it, at least until it gets knocked off that throne. So for more reviews of humidors or humidification products, cigars, any cigar accessory, as well as cigar news, legislation, anything to do with cigars, you can check out halfwheel.com. I'll put some links to some other humidors in here that you might be of interest, or might be of interest to you. And until next time, I'm Charlie Minato, and this is the Halfwheel Office.